Okay, hello, beautiful people. Let me just do this. Clearing the space, clearing the transmission, keeping the recording protected and without interference. Thank you. A lot of these messages, certain elements of the consciousness do not want me to tell you. I have been learning this the hard way. Here I am, Charlie Giles. Lovely to be with you again and meet you online. Welcome to the online community. If you have just stumbled across this video, this is the Sacred Wound Medicine YouTube channel. My name is Charlie Giles. You are welcome. And please subscribe for videos much like this one. Also interviews from different speakers, etc., etc. Lovely to have you. What I'm going to talk about today are entities. A good juicy topic that a lot of people have different ideas about, which is totally okay. My experience is very real to me, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be sharing it. But it's also what I've witnessed in many other people. And it's what plant medicines have taught me. And it is actually the reason why I am being called to work with plant medicine. And many people might say, oh, of course, there are so many people being called to work with plant medicine. Everyone wants to be a piece of it. I'll be honest with you, I would pass it up if I could. It's actually really hard, and it's not a lifestyle that is conducive to easy living, easy money, easy business, easy lifestyle. It's incredibly challenging. If I wasn't being called to do this the way that I am, I mean, I'm about to go into the jungle for 3 months and be kind of stripped of all, creature comforts, all nice food, all, you're in the middle of the jungle, no electricity, no internet, no creature comforts at all, doing deter and sitting with plants and meditating and fasting and being in silence for hours. Now, I'm not saying this is a complaint. This is the training. It is hard, right? I'm honored to be doing this work. I know that this will make me grow as a practitioner, as a healer, to have to have plant spirits as my allies, to build relationships in the spirit world is an incredible honor. It's also terrifying because I have to bring up all my stuff. I have to get all of my ego stuff up and out from the surface. I have to constantly be in check of staying humble. I have to constantly keep my ego in check. I have to always be bringing out my own triggers and things to see that I'm not trying to heal for validation, that I'm healing through as a vessel for what the plants can do, for what the spirits can do, right? This is a constant thing for someone who is going into the healing work. And I'm telling you this because when I talk about entities, it's from the fact that in my experience, from the first time that I started taking plant medicine, I could see the entities. I could see them from myself at first, and then I could see them with other people, and then I could hear them, and then I can hear, and it's very hard to describe because it's not a language that I can explain, but I can hear when other people have them and when their entities start to come up through the medicine. And it's almost like the medicine, I'm trying to explain something that I haven't actually explained before, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. It's like the plant medicine brings these entities to the surface, okay? And these entities don't like being discovered. So they kick and scream and make a lot of noise, but they're not, when they're first coming up to the surface, they're not out of the box noises. They're kind of normal things that just sounds like the person is being uncomfortable. But I can hear them as their entity starting to come to the surface. I'm not saying that I'm the only person in the world. That's absolutely not true. I don't know enough people to know whether that's true. I do know that some other shamans agree with me as far as they can hear different things. But for some reason, I have this language thing that I can hear what it is. Now, I was never in a million years going to talk about this publicly because I sound like a total nutbag, right? But then I thought, well, that's what they want. They don't want people talking about this because the best thing for entities that are basically parasites for the human psyche, the human soul, the human energy body, they're feeding off us. They're feeding off our fears. They're helping to keep us, to stop us from healing. They don't want us to heal. They want to feed off our wounds. They want to feed off our grief. They want to feed off our shame. They want to keep us in our habits. They want to keep us addicted to things. They want to keep us stuck in all these low-level vibrational habits and issues and consciousness that we are in as a human society. They want to keep us there because that's what feeds them, right? That's that whole growing that different level of consciousness, this lower level form of energies and entities. So the more that they keep us in these patterns, in these darker patterns, where we're stuck keeping ourselves eating, food that we don't want to, and then on top of that we feel bad, and on top of that we feel shame and guilt. These are all emotions that keep feeding these things, right? Same with grief. If we are stuck in grief and we feel like we can't release our grief, we feel like we don't have enough time to grieve for someone that we've just lost because we've got to get back to work and feed the kids, then they love that. Great. Yes, don't release this. We will feed off this. And then, of course, anxiety and all the different things, anything fear-based, shame-based, guilt, all of that great juicy stuff that they love feeding off. If we keep that all trapped inside of us, then entities will stay fed. Now, as I said before, this wasn't a topic that I ever planned on talking about publicly. And that was my own fear of, what will people say? People think I'm a loon bag. Obviously people will dismiss it, or there's people that go, oh, I don't believe in all that stuff. Or, of course, the energies themselves will attack, which I do get a lot of, because they don't want this message getting out. Like I said, they want people to stay wounded and in trauma. They don't want people to realize that if you heal and you release all this stuff, obviously the world, the consciousness, the balance of humanity will all feel so much lighter. And you as a person will have an incredibly different way of living because you'll be free of all these things weighing you down, and you'll be free of the entities. But I decided that I would talk about this for the risk of all of those things. I mean, anything these days that you talk about, there's going to be somebody that doesn't agree with you, right? Anything that I talk about, there's going to be people thinking that I'm a nutbag. So what? Maybe I am. But I know what I saw. I know what I've experienced. I know what I've witnessed in other people. I know what I have been shown by the most incredible wise beings. And it would be wrong for me to doubt the things that I've seen, my own knowing. And it would be wrong for me to, I guess, even question that or hold that in now. That would not be okay. That would not be okay for me to not share this information, especially when it's information that can help so many people. If you take the path of saying that you don't believe in it and it doesn't matter, and, as far as you're concerned, if you keep yourself feeling into a higher vibration, then you're free of them, then I am here to tell you that is exactly what they want you to think. Entities are, so what are they? They are all different levels of consciousness, okay? But entities will end up having their own level of consciousness. They don't have a human form and they haven't been a human, okay? It's a spirit form, but it's made up of, whilst there are light beings, there are beautiful light angelic beings, there are also dark beings. Now, there has to be. You have to accept, if you accept the fact that there are light beings, you have to accept the fact that there are dark beings, because we are in a world of polar opposites. That's what the balance is. However big the light is, there has to be dark. So, and this is the reason. I mean, look at the world today. there is obviously an imbalance happening at the moment, which is why so many people are being called to heal, so that the universe can correct the imbalance, right? So many people are being called to release the darkness and let go, so that we can get it back into balance. Don't let me get on that soapbox. So the entities don't want you to believe that they're real, or want you to just think that if you just stay in a high vibrational frequency that you're going to be okay. I'm sorry, but I don't know very many humans today that can just always stay in a high vibrational frequency. If you are, then I don't know what rock or mountain you're living on, because you're not living in the world then, because the low vibrational frequencies are all around us all the time. And yeah, I guess unless you're kind of Buddha or enlightened or Jesus, then I'm not sure how you're staying so much in that high frequency. And then how can you meet people? How can you help people if you're not coming down into being a human where the frequencies are challenging and tough? Now, I'm not saying that you're not, don't mishear what I'm saying, that you're not a beautiful, amazing soul that might be able to stay in high frequencies or take yourself there. But I'm just saying living life from that space is probably not very possible unless you've, not living in your body most of the time. So what I'm getting at is, don't let that thought or that thought pattern make you assume that you are free of being, at some point in time coerced by the entities that are living in that low vibrational pattern. Now, I feel like I digressed a little there. What they are attracted to are your weaknesses. Now, your weaknesses are things like, whether you have low self-esteem, whether you have a lack of confidence, whether you've had an old, a trauma of rejection, whether you've lost someone, grief, whether you're scared of losing other people, whether you have an anxiety that you're frightened of certain things, certain aspects. We all have something, right, that we're either afraid of being rejected, as I said. Whatever that is, that's their entry point. That's the part that they will play with and push the buttons of and try to kind of get an opening in somehow. How do they get an opening? Well, most of us have got some kind of trauma. It causes a tear in your spirit, any kind of trauma. Accidents, injuries, taking excessive drugs, alcohol, medication, any of those kind of excessive things can cause tears and openings. And also just actually physically saying that you open yourself up to different things, which surprisingly a lot of people do, because they don't understand the bigness of what they're doing. So, and even things like playing Ouija boards and stuff like that, when people think that this is just a game, that's the most perfect opening of all, because it's not. There are very many real spirits and entities out there waiting to play with a human or have a host and be able to direct that host and work with that host in whatever ways they want. Some are bigger than others. Some are stronger than others. Some are very small and tiny and minuscule and probably only have an effect on you that may start to cause you to want something specific, a food or a drug or a drink or something. Sexual addictions, pretty much everything is connected to an entity of some kind that is a driving force. Now, some people, might think that what I'm trying to say here is that it's not the human doing things, or that I'm trying to somehow blame entities for all of the, misfortunes and bad habits of humans. I'm not saying that at all. We are still completely 100% responsible. And I'm saying that as someone who has I've kind of lost count as to how many I had to purge and get rid of, especially because I had one particular one that just kept coming back. And the only reason it kept coming back was because I made space for it. I wasn't doing my work in between time. I wasn't making the changes that I needed to change. So the home for it was still there. And the process of this is that this idea of us being on different frequencies is so important, to know what is the frequency that you are mostly maintaining. And I say mostly because, again, we're human. We're going to have good days and bad days. I don't want you to be afraid of being down or afraid of being in fear, or that, you know what I'm saying. We still need to be human. We need to accept the fact that these things are around, because what that does is it then makes you vigilant about keeping yourself safe, about keeping your home safe, about keeping yourself, what's the word I'm looking for? Not on alert, because that sounds a little bit too extreme, but vigilant about the fact that other people will bring other energies into your home, in and around you. And it's okay for you to clear that energy when those people leave, or not want to be around those people if they're not healthy for you, and if that's a good choice. To be vigilant about your own energy and your own protection of what you have around you. That's incredibly important. And you're allowed to do that. My point for bringing this to the light, pardon the pun, is that it's not for entities to be feared, because that's what they want. Okay? They want us to be terrified of them. Our images of, horror movies, of The Exorcist, if I would know if I had an entity, because my head would be spinning and I'd be speaking in a scary voice. Well, that's not true at all. I mean, trust me, in ceremonies, I have seen them come out as different things, as different beings. I've seen them throw people up in the air and spin them around. But that's very extreme scenarios. So, but what I'm getting at is that's not the only form. That's this kind of severe possession is not the only form of an entity. That's a very Hollywood style. And they want you to be frightened of that. Okay. What I'm getting at is respecting the fact that there are energies there, the same as there are beautiful, loving, light energies there to help and protect us and guide us and give us compassion and help take our burdens. There are also entities that are from the other scale, wanting to keep us in a dark space to feed them. They're parasites. That's all they think about, is how they can survive on this planet, right? And they survive by finding a host that will feed them what they need. And they will do whatever it takes to stay with you. And they will convince you of a whole bunch of things. So when you do plant medicine, it is very often the case, because the plant spirits want to rid you of these things, and they will try and bring these things to the surface. They awaken them, and they bring them to the surface, because plant medicines have the ability to do this, especially ayahuasca. But mushrooms can as well. And you will start to go through a specific change in the ceremony. You will start to fight it. You will start to try and resist, but it's actually the entity trying to make you resist the process. You'll probably likely purge a lot. Purging is the entity getting released. Things will start to annoy you. The music, the rattles will really annoy you. All these sounds will annoy the shaman. You'll probably despise the shaman. You won't want them near you. They will suddenly you'll be angry about the whole process. You don't want to attend anymore. You want it to stop. You want someone to stop with the medicine. You don't, maybe at the end of it, you never want to do medicine ever again. A lot of these things are entities speaking for you, basically convincing you to not do this, and this is horrible, and you want it all to stop. They make ceremonies very awful for you because they don't want you to keep going, and because they're hating the fact that they've shown up. I want you to keep this in mind, because I had to, when I was going through this myself, I separated myself from the voice that was telling me to sing out, because I almost at the top of my voice told the shaman to shut the hell up, because it was like fingernails on a chalkboard, him singing. And that's what made me realize, because I'd already kind of knew that I had something that had to come out. And I thought, that's really odd, because that's not really something I would do. And obviously I stopped myself. And then the yelling and the screaming that started was so overpowering that I thought, this isn't me. And then this separation of thought was actually what helped me to realize and then start seeing. That's when ayahuasca stepped in, and she's like, this isn't you. This is the entity that I'm trying to get out for you. And then she started showing me the world through the entity's eyes. And this is when my real training began. So I was then like, and this is hard to explain and doesn't really make sense, but it's like she was allowing me to shift my consciousness. So I wasn't me anymore. I was the entity. And I could hear what it was thinking and what it was saying. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a thing that's trying to now look for someone else to jump into, because it knows it's going to get ripped out of me. And I could hear that what it was looking for. And then it was trying to convince me how much I hated myself, so that I would start to bring up this stuff to build its energy. So what happens in plant medicine is that when you are purging, and when the shaman is singing, and when the rattle is going, and all of these noises, and the icaros are so important for this, because the energies that they're singing, they're actually guiding and directing the plant spirits to pull these things out of you, to shift the energy and to pull different energies out of you. And the entities can't stand it. And they start coming to the top, and their energy starts purging. So they're getting weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And the smaller their energy gets, the harder it is for them to be controlling with you. But they get noisier. So that's the problem. The smaller they are getting, the noisier they are, because they want to tell the world how upset they are, and they carry on, which is why you often hear people, when they start purging, they really start sounding like they're like a growling beast of some kind, or they start screaming or wailing or doing really strange, weird noises. It's actually the entity just wanting to carry on and wanting attention. They also want to work by scaring other people. So if they start making really horrendous, stupid noises, it's because they also want to get the fear of other participants, because if you're not used to hearing it, it does sound pretty awful. And so they start getting frightened. They're pulling them out of their journey and starting to get frightened. And then the entity is trying to find fear and feed off that. They are really tricky little beings. Again, the reason why I'm telling you this is because nobody talks about it. Very often you'll go to ceremonies and they ask people to be quiet, or, not interfering with other people. You don't want to scare other people. But what they're not understanding is, and that is true in some aspects. I mean, you're not supposed to really be trying to interfere with other people's journeys. But if you've got something that needs to come out, then that's when you need the right shaman to be able to pull it out, okay, at a time when it needs to come out. But it's also that the shaman is working with ayahuasca to know when the most amount of energy has come out of the entity, so that he can pull it out, or she can pull it out easier, because it's too hard to pull them out when they're big, massive energies, when they've only just been coming to the surface. So sometimes you have to give that time to have the person purging and releasing. And sometimes what can be happening for that person is they're being shown how they got it in the first place. Unfortunately, some people don't understand what is going on, and they're just terrified by the whole experience, and they never want to do medicine ever again, which is totally understandable. It can be really frightening. If you don't have an understanding about entities, then what they show you in the visions is just hell, and it's awful, and you feel awful, and you never want to do medicine again. But what you don't realize is that's an entity that you want to get out. Yes. I feel like I'm giving you a lot of information that is probably a lot to digest, and I'm hoping I'm saying it in a way that is making sense. I've just experienced so many myself personally, and also witnessed a lot of people having them removed, but then also a lot of people who have had them in a time when I was in a space that was just held by a facilitator. And again, I know the facilitator had the best intentions. The room was full of people with entities, and there was yelling and screaming going on everywhere, and they didn't know what to do. And I felt really awful because I could see them, and I could see people who were just terrified of what was going on. But when the entities know that there's no control of the space, they just run wild. And they're either jumping from person to person, or they're just making that person who's having the experience have a really awful night, because they're not getting any help with getting rid of that energy, which is what a really well-trained shaman can do. There'll be a bit of a struggle, but the shaman will be able to come in, rip that thing out, and seal you back up so it doesn't come back in. Yeah, it's a crazy world out there. But this is why healing is so, so incredible. It's such an incredible experience. When I was confronted with my alcohol spirit, my alcohol entity, it's the most incredible experience. I mean, I've had a lot of incredible experiences. I've had quite a few different entities removed. And like I said, one particular one that kept coming back, but the alcohol entity wasn't actually within me. It was connected to me by my contract that I had with it, which I had made through drinking, which is how most people make a contract with a spirit. I'm just telling you this as my experience. This isn't a judgment on drinking or anything like that. But I will tell you this, because I had already had many entities removed over a 5-6 year period. So lots of integration in between, lots of healing work in between, lots of really big, tough ceremonies. Now, I'm saying this now knowing that ayahuasca has been training me this entire time for entities, and it's something that I have that allows me to see them. I don't know. I'll probably find out more in Peru. So this isn't something that would be normal for everyone. So you don't have to worry about having this experience all the time. But this is just me. So, but the interesting one with the spirit of alcohol was that I was literally standing face to face. I was actually doing a ceremony by myself. Not recommended. Please don't go off and think that that's a good idea. It's not. I was guided specifically by my past great-grandmother, who was a medicine woman, Aboriginal medicine woman. She was guiding me. I was using acacia, which is a known Indigenous DMT, very high DMT powered plant in Australia. So I was being guided. I do not recommend doing any ceremonies by yourself. I didn't know why at the time, but it was kind of a last linchpin that I hadn't given up alcohol yet, and I didn't understand my connection to it. So I would always go on dieta in preparation for a ceremony and clean up and not drink or whatever. But in between that, I still had a very powerful, strong attachment to alcohol. Alcohol has been a part of my life since I was probably 16. I grew up with an alcoholic father, so, alcohol has always been a problem in our family and for me. I wasn't a stereotypical alcoholic, but I was definitely someone who didn't want to live without it. So it was a natural part of my day and a part of my social life. I didn't see it so much as a problem. I thought I could just kind of drink when I wasn't doing healing work. Drink when I wasn't doing healing work, and then not drink when I was doing healing work. But the plants had a different idea. And what I didn't know was this alcohol spirit was literally still contracted to me. It was still a part of my soul, tied into my soul. Most entities. So there's various forms of entities. You can have them embedded in as part of your soul. You can have them in a part of your energy body. You can have them externally outside, just annoying you all the time. Different levels, and it will depend on different, how you got it, whether it was a traumatic experience, whether it's part of a soul contract that you've vowed in somehow. That's probably all a whole nother conversation. And if you have any questions to that, leave them in the comments. So back to my alcohol spirit. So I had this ceremony. I didn't know the purpose of this ceremony. All I knew was that my great grandmother was guiding me to do this ceremony by myself. And like I said, I'd already removed lots of entities already. So I thought that I was quite clear already, but I wasn't. So about an hour and a half in, and it's very, very heavy. It's very strong. I felt a huge presence of allies around me. And then it got really dark and really like, my spidey senses had come up, and I knew that something was around, and they were basically saying, we're going to be getting rid of something with you this today. Like, okay, I'm thinking, damn, I got another one. But it was very different to the way that I had purged the other ones. And all of a sudden, all of my flashbacks of drinking and alcohol were coming through, and all this other stuff. And I was basically face to face with the alcohol, the spirit of alcohol. And it's laughing at me and taunting at me, saying, you're never going to be able to give me up. We've made a contract. Look at all these things that we've done together. Look at all the fun we've had together. Confidence I've given you, the fun times you've had. And I'm like, yeah, but you've also caused me a lot of pain. You've also caused me a lot of loss. You know, the loss of my dad, the loss of my family members. I used to say things that would hurt people. I was very sick. I'd pass out, alcohol poisoning. Like, you know, I need to be rid of this. Anyway, long story short, there was this kind of taunting backwards and forwards, and the visions were crazy, and it was getting really awful. And then I suddenly felt this massive big ball of energy, like as if I had swallowed a giant kind of soccer ball of some kind. I mean, that probably is bigger than what it was, but it felt just huge. And I could feel it as a black gunky ball, and it was kind of rising up through my chest, and it was awful. It was like it was taking my breath away and putting a whole bunch of pressure on my chest. And all of my plant spirit allies had turned up, my great grandmother, and they're all like, you need to make a decision right now. Because I'm like, what is this? This is awful. And it was painful. And I knew it wasn't a physical thing where I was going to die or anything like that. I knew it was an energetic processing or purging. And the alcohol spirit had started to kind of really go crazy. And it's begging me to say, please stay. I won't give you up. But what was happening was we will get rid of this for you. All the plant spirit allies said to me, and my great grandmother, and she's like, you need to release yourself of this. We will purge this from you, because this is a deep-seated contract that you made with the alcohol spirit. This is a deep-seated contract. We will release the core of this for you if you don't drink alcohol anymore. And it was actually in that moment that the plants were calling on me and this pathway. It was kind of like, if this is going to be your journey and your world, we'll do this for you. We will get rid of this anchor. It was like an anchor that I had to the spirit of alcohol, the tied-in contract that I'd constantly asked for. So what we don't realize is that when we make a deal with a spirit, that sounds like, oh, I'm going to sign my contract with my blood. No. This is how the spirit of alcohol works. Just for your own information. You are asking for, I just want to tune out for the day. I've had a big day. I'm just going to have a drink just to relax. That's actually what you're asking for, right? I want you to relax me. I want you to ease my pain. I want you to ease my troubles. I want you to help me sleep. I want you to insert whatever it is the reason why you're having a drink. Now, I know you can say, oh, but I just like having a drink. Yeah, I used to say that too. But there's another reason. And it could be, I want to celebrate the birth of my baby. I want to celebrate a wedding. I want to celebrate something. I'm not saying it's all bad. And that's okay. But what you have to know is that there is a spirit attached to it. Okay? Alcohol is actually the word for spirit. And it's a well-known with Indigenous people, well known over many, many years. And it will take something from you in return. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. It won't be anything that you really notice. It will be a little tiny blip of your spirit, a little tiny blip of your aura, a little tiny pinhole, perhaps, because that's all it needs. And it will be feeding off your energy, which is why, you know, if you look at someone who is drunk their entire life, they do look like they've had most of their life stolen from them. I know my dad did. It will just be stealing bits of your life from you, and it's little tiny bits at a time until eventually you're like leaking like a sieve, which is exactly what was happening to me. So I'll get back to that. Hold that thought. So here I am being shown, standing with the alcohol spirit in front of me, laughing at me, saying, you'll never be able to give me up. I have my great-grandmother and all of my allies. I have a huge Aboriginal tribe who come visit me every time I'm in plant medicine ceremony, who are my ascendants and my family. I also have plant spirits that work with me, and they were all supportive of me, saying, and I've got this massive, big, awful ball of energy that is beating down on my chest and painful and awful. I thought I wasn't going to be able to breathe. It felt like I was holding my breath for a really long time, saying, do you think you're able to promise? And I was like, absolutely, yes, I can do this. I will give it up. Now, as this is starting to come up, I knew I had to get to a sink of some kind. I was picked up. There was no one else in the room, but I was picked up. I couldn't use my legs at the time. Dragged across to the kitchen sink, and all of this stuff came up. Now, I want to say, whenever I've purged in ceremony, I've actually never had anything come out of my mouth. It's just maybe a bit of spit, but that's about it, because the medicine had already gone. I hadn't eaten anything all day. And there was this big, disgusting blob of goop, which wasn't the medicine, and just tons of liquid. And after I did that, I somehow got back to the chair that I was sitting on, and it was like all of the medicine had just cleared and everything was amazing and clear and beautiful. The spirit of alcohol was just like gone. And the whole room was filled with incredible light, but there was like kind of like a black ash, as though something had just been, I don't know, blown up and flying all around the room. And the release was gone. The whole release in my chest, I felt incredible, and everything kind of just went quiet. I remember it specifically because it was a feeling of freedom. And I knew in that moment that I would never drink alcohol again. Never. Now, that was nearly 2 years ago. I haven't had a stitch of alcohol, but not only that, I don't think about it. Now, if you're someone who drinks alcohol, you know that that thought pops up about alcohol all the time. Like if I was asked to go out to lunch somewhere, I'd always think, well, you know, it depends on what kind of wine they've got. It depends what kind of drink they have. I mean, I wouldn't have lunch without a drink at a restaurant. That kind of thought was always there. I don't even have that thought anymore. It's not like being in a recovery alcohol where you're white knuckling it and thinking, oh, I'm just not allowed to have one. I don't even think about it. It's the most incredible freedom that I could ever wish for. And that was the blessing that I got from the plant spirits who were my ally, because the gift they gave me was the fact that I wasn't going to have to struggle with an addiction, with an addictive thought of always saying no. I didn't have to have willpower, which is what the alcohol spirit taunted me with. It kept saying, you won't be strong enough to say no to me. And I kind of thought that I wouldn't be, because I hadn't been in the past. I tried to give it up before and I never succeeded. I'd be able to go a week or maybe 2 weeks or whatever, but I could never give it up. It was too hard. So the gift that the plant spirits gave me was the fact that it wouldn't rely on my willpower. It wouldn't rely on discipline. I would literally not have a desire for it. It doesn't do anything. I couldn't have any if I tried, if I was forced to. It just, I couldn't even imagine it. That's the gift that I've been given. But it's also like the sign of the promise that I made to the plant spirits as well. That as a reminder of how supportive they can be, the power that they have over the spirits. So whilst I'm talking to you about entities, and I wanted to share this story with you, I've never told that story, by the way, in its entirety like that. But the reason why I wanted to say this to you is because whilst I'm talking about entities and their power and their consciousness and their ability to entice us and get in our ear and talk us into different things and hold us in habits and addictions, the plant spirits have power over them. That's the best part. They really do. And they don't want you to know that. That's why they're terrified of you going to a plant medicine ceremony, because they know that ayahuasca and acacia and powerful plant spirits, chacruna, they can get them out. They really can. But you have to work with them. That's the idea. That's the power in me explaining how they work and having you on board with it and having you go, okay, there's probably a pretty good chance I've got an entity of some kind. It may not necessarily be a big one or different layers of them, but I probably need to get rid of something. So I'm going to be supportive of this ceremony. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get this thing out and change my ways and give up the things that I've been doing that holds it there. Work on my self-worth, work on my self-love, work on dropping into my heart, working on accepting the fact that I'm human, working on releasing my grief, my shame, forgiving myself. Oh my goodness, it's like the biggest thing ever. Forgive yourself. I hope that I haven't gone around in circles in this conversation. It's not the easiest thing for me to talk about when I haven't talked about it before. There are so many other stories that I could share with you that I will at some point. But I feel like this has been the first introductory video on entities. And as I said, it can be difficult to explain because the things that I've experienced, I sometimes don't have words for them yet. And I don't know how it sounds to people who haven't experienced it. So by all means, leave questions in the comments because that will help me to unpack more things that I know about. It's not about being afraid of them. It's about knowing that they exist, protecting yourself from them, accepting that we're all human, probably have some kind of dealings with them in some way, and that we can get rid of them. Don't be afraid that you can't get rid of them. You can. Okay? Okay. Thank you so much for listening. It's been such a pleasure to share this with you. Yeah. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more.